Good morning, everybody. Happy February the 1st, 2026. I am here today still thinking about how galaxies and atoms are exactly the same thing. And that's the only constraint to this new hypothesis. Galaxies and atoms are exactly the same thing. And from there, you can figure out how everything works, pretty much. And one of the really exciting things to fall out of that right away is the way that gravity works. Gravity is just all matter pushing on all matter. It depends on the state of your matter, how it interacts with an incoming gravitational push from all the other matter. And if your protons are all random, which is usually how your protons all are, then your matter gets pushed equally from all directions. But we can, once we know that those little protons are little spinning coins, we can make them all spin in parallel with the right magnetic field. The right spinning magnetic field is what I think is all that is necessary. And we'll be able to do things like change the inertia of mass, but we'll also be able to do things like make just about anything crystallize as it's solidifying by having it solidify in this overarching field. And so what I see coming down the road is large crystals. And we'll be able to use those large crystals as batteries. We'll be able to cut those crystals so that when light goes into them, it can't get back out. And so the crystal will build up energy inside of it that it will be possible to tap. And that'll come with, a whole bunch more do's and don'ts. I can see those crystals exploding if they get overexposed to sun. But it won't just be big crystals for batteries. I think that we'll be able to do things by crystallizing various plastics and various other materials. If you crystallize them, you'll be able to get some really new and interesting and useful properties that way. And the way we do that is we use what I think what we need to use to do that is spinning mercury, and have heated spinning mercury within an enclosed pathway where the mercury gets spun up to high speeds, and it creates the spinning mercury will create a field in the shape that you make it spin, and the kind of field that you want. That's how I think that it's done. And part of the reason I think that it's done that way is because reading up about old East Indian Vimanas, they had these Vimanas in East India, and they were flying machines. And there was poetry written about them in the Bhagavad Gita, or I'm not sure how to even pronounce it, the big history, the Indian history, poetry and everything. And they wrote about these Vimanas, and they were talking about They were talking about heated mercury or energized mercury moving around two curved pathways. And there'd be a roaring sound, and these Vimanians would sail up into the air. So it's, and then there's all that mercury that was purportedly found underneath the pyramids. I don't know if it was or not, but there was, I heard about amounts of mercury that have been found here and there. Mercury is so dangerous, but it looks like it might be really useful. But we want to make a ferrofluid anyway turn in certain patterns, and I think that we'll be able to tap gravity. And if we can tap gravity, we don't need any other, we don't need oil, we don't even need the sun. If you can tap gravity, you can go interstellar. You don't even need the energy from any star. You can just get your own energy. You go anywhere you want. You're not dependent on a star if you can tap gravity. And that's why these things like big Dyson spheres, Dyson sphere, like where you have to build, you're building close around your sun so you get every last photon from the sun. Like, no. We don't even need that energy from the sun. I mean, it's nice to have it for plants like it and stuff, but even in deep space, if you can tap gravity, you've got light and heat and everything you want. But speaking of light, I started out trying to figure out light, and then I got distracted by realizing that atoms might be like disks, like galaxies, and instantaneously they might be a two-dimensional disk. And then I started thinking about atoms like rapidly spinning disks with a magnetic pole at right angle to the disk, which is rapidly spinning. So what you've got with an atom is rapidly spinning little electromagnetic structures, but they're opposing charges, and they're usually equally opposed, and so they cancel each other out, and you don't see the spinning magnetism unless it's an ion, a cation or an anion, and they've got unequal charge. And then when you've got the unequal charge spinning, that's when you'll get the evidence of the spinning magnetic pole, and which becomes an electric dipole with spinning charges. But the whole thing with that, when you've got an electron or a star arm and it's accelerating in a circle, you've got a magnetic pole associated at right angles to that circle. And so all those magnetic poles are interacting, and we can interact with them. And once we realize that, every atom has a little handle, a little rotating handle that it can be grabbed if you know how to grab it. But I don't know what I was even going to talk about this morning. really. Like, it's so important to know how gravity works. If we could get it happening. Gravity is caused by all matter pushing on all matter. The electrons in the matter are doing the same thing that stars do. They're fusing the material from which they are made. So stars have hydrogen on their surfaces, which gets fused by a process. They say it happens in the star center, but no, it happens on the star's surface. And on the star's surface, there's so much outward push of gravity that hydrogen gets squeezed against the surface and gets fused. And what happens is that you get plasma and you get energy released and photons and neutrinos, and stars are always fusing. They're always fusing and releasing radiation. And then when you go down a level, a fractal level, to the electron is a tiny little star arm of 50 billion stars. And every one of those tiny little stars is fusing the next space down. It's fusing our space. It's fusing the hydrogen atoms part of the next space down. And so all of those electrons are fusing space, and they're releasing radiation at the next level down. So there's whole other spectra of radiation below our photons and our neutrinos that react with our atoms. Down at the level of space, you've got the atoms that make up space, and those atoms are interacting with photons and neutrinos at their size and at their frequency. And their size is 10 to the 31 times smaller than our size. The galaxy is 10 to the 21 meters in diameter, I believe it is. And a carbon atom is 10 to the minus 10 meters. So 10 to the 21 plus a negative 10 to the 21 minus, or however, anyway, you go 10 to the 21 up and 10 to the minus 10 down, and the difference between galaxies and atoms is 10 to the minus 31. And that's the difference between the radiation sizes. So our photons and our neutrinos that our atoms are interacting with are 10 to the 31 times bigger and slower, at least in frequency, than the emanations that are coming from atoms. And when these little mini star arms that are electrons are releasing these next smaller photons and neutrinos, they are releasing them 10 to the 31 times smaller and 10 to the 31 times more numerous. And I'm not sure about the speed. Light speed is hard to work in there. And it's hard to prove that there's anything faster than light speed. But I find it hard to believe that a smaller spectrum of radiation that much smaller and that much higher in frequency, I find it hard to believe that it wouldn't be faster. That's light. Light's interesting. Light is not rotation around a single axis. Light is rotation around two axes, just like electrons, except light rotates in a 1-to-1 ratio. So every time light rotates once in the vertical axis, it also rotates once in the horizontal axis. So light is 1-to-1 spin. It's spin 1/1. And what that causes is that the front of the light wave will always remain on one side of the center of the rotation, because a 1-to-1 wave just makes a figure 8 on one side of the sphere. And so you've got the front of your wave is always towards that figure 8. And that figure 8 is always on one side of the axis. And that, I believe, is what causes radiation to travel. It's because it's got its spin offset from its spin center, permanently offset from its spin center. And so it just goes. Whereas matter is a 1/2. So every time it rotates once around the vertical axis, it rotates twice around the horizontal axis, and it balances off, and you get pathway on all sides of the sphere, and the energy stays in one place. But with the light, it's just 1-to-1, and you get this you get a figure 8 on one side of the sphere, and the light goes that way because it's unbalanced. Its spin is unbalanced from the center of the spin. I think that's what it looks like anyway. Anyway, it's the galaxy model for the atom, and you can always buy my book from Amazon. I don't have it around here right now to show you. But the galaxy model for the atom by John Sefton, the universal fractal. Buy that book, that would help. Because I would really like, I think we can tap gravity. I think we can tap gravity, and if we can tap gravity, we don't even need the sun. We don't even need a star. If you can tap gravity, you can get energy anywhere in the universe. Anywhere. Anyway, you guys all have a good day. And I don't know what I was even talking about today. Maybe talk some more about light tomorrow. Light's so much fun. Have a good day.